Hey guys, so we are here to talk about the 39-page cross complaint. It's effectively a lawsuit from Alec Baldwin that has just come out that is dealing with, sorry about the sound there, that is dealing with the, to some extent, the other lawsuits, but also, I guess, Alec Baldwin's situation. Now, on the 21st of October last year, Helena Hutchins lost her life. That's her. By the way, the image behind me was also taken by her on the set of on the Rust set in near Santa Fe, New Mexico. The thing that we seem to have to keep reminding ourselves of, because it seems to be absent of the narrative, is that Alec Baldwin was actually holding the gun. Alec Baldwin was the person who held the gun when it went off, and the gun was, the firearm was, how can I put it? I don't want to get myself into trouble. I don't want to say it was pointed at Helena Hutchins, but the fact that Helena suffered a bullet wound meant that it wasn't pointed away from her. And, you know, no matter what you want to blame in terms of safety protocols, the fact is that someone held a firearm, and whether purposefully or not, it was pointed at Helena Hutchins, right? And as a result of whatever happened, the bullet that came out of that firearm hit her and she died, right? So in this analysis, we're going to go through the 39-page complaint. It's got some brand new crime scene images, which is definitely worth looking at quite closely. It's also got Alec Baldwin's position on certain things and on his, I guess, his colleagues. But before we get to that, let's have a look at some of the news stories, starting with Deadline, right? So Deadline, the headline in Deadline is Alec Baldwin sues Rust crew for negligence. Actor wants to clear his name after fatal set shooting. He says the incident cost him roles, right? Do you think it's true that he wants to clear his name? Like, do you think that this lawsuit is about him clearing his name? And the reason I say that is, hasn't he been clearing his name all along? I mean, does he need a lawsuit to do that? Hasn't he been clearing his name all along? And hence, there's a poll. Make sure you vote in it if you haven't already. Why is he taking this step now, like more than a year later? Is he trying to clear his name? Only 8% of you think that is what he's trying to do. 12%, almost double, think that he's trying to pressure others to drop suits. Bear in mind, he's a multimillionaire, no one else is. And then 15% say he's trying to deflect blame to others. And then almost 2/3 say it's all of those. He is trying to clear his name. He is trying to pressure others. He is trying to deflect blame, right? Okay, so there's quite a good write-up in the LA Times. Baldwin sues Rust armorer, weapons supplier, assistant director, and prop master. And didn't you have the impression early on that Baldwin seemed to be quite protective over the assistant director? Or is that still the case? So let's just quickly go into a little bit of the LA Times article. It says here, and I think this really sums everything up very well. It says here, Actor Alec Baldwin sued the armorer, weapon supplier, first assistant director, and prop master on the movie Rust for negligence after he accidentally shot and killed cinematographer Elena Hutchins. Just think about that sentence on its own. He's suing all these other people for negligence after he accidentally shot and killed someone. And that's why I say it's quite weird that you've got to kind of remind yourself that he was actually holding the firearm and it went off while he was holding it. And however it happened, wasn't he pointing it in a particular direction? But I mean, it's basically he's suing everyone else for negligence, not everyone, four other people for negligence, after he accidentally shot somebody. Somebody else didn't accidentally shoot someone, he did. But I do agree that it's not just something in isolation. So, if you asked me, who should be the focus of whatever the investigation, I don't think I would say only Alec Baldwin. And I don't think I would say only the armorer or even these four individuals. I would say, what is the whole dynamic of the whole crew, the whole set? What is the comprehensive, the overall attitude of the entire staff, the entire crew to safety, right? What is the overall vibe on set? That's what, and where did that come from? Who set the tone for that vibe? And you actually see how, in their attempt to get an armorer at short notice, they tried to get an experienced one, couldn't. They wanted someone to take two roles for the price of one. You can see there feels like cost cutting and certain concessions being made quite early on, right? I also think, and this is another story for a different day, I think what happened subsequent to the Rust incident, right? I think the attitudes to the Rust incident in terms of what happened subsequent, I think that tells you something about the attitudes that went into the Rust incident before, right? In other words, the post-meditation tells you something about the premeditation, right? Karen Deanne, live from Houston, Texas. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you here. Some of the usual suspects are here. Bria Lace talking about cutting corners. Susan Gittins. Good to see you, Helena, Zircon, Brian with Concepts. I think you've changed your avatar name. Stephanie, good to see you as well. Okay, so the rest of this article, it says here, the actor made the filing as a cross complaint in the ongoing case of script supervisor Mamie Mitchell, who is suing Baldwin for all of that, right? Now, I think that gives you an idea of what we're really talking about. So it's kind of like Baldwin is being sued and he's answering that. So it's not that there's nothing happening. It is in the context of being sued that he's suing someone else. So it's almost like he's saying, okay, you are accusing me of something. Well, now I'm going to cross that to someone else. You need to look at them. It almost is like he's deflecting. He's saying, this thing that you're accusing me of, well, look at what really was negligent, but look at these people. Don't look at me. So you are accusing me of these things. Well, there's some merit to some of it potentially. There might have been negligence. There may have been recklessness. But look at these people. Don't look at me, right? It's not like a cross complaint. It's like you, and it actually comes up in the complaint on the very first page. Mamie Mitchell, plaintiff versus that. Then it says cross complaint, and then it refers to these other individuals, right? Can you see that? I think that's the best way to really explain what I'm trying to say is Mamie Mitchell, she's the plaintiff. She's accusing all of these people, but especially Alec Baldwin, and she's accusing him of negligence and all of that and of that. And then he is saying cross-complainant versus, and then these people. Can you see how it's sort of redirecting that complaint to this one? We'll come back to that in a moment. Then at the next paragraph refers to really what this is all about, what the content is of this cross-complaint. Baldwin and his attorney pulled from text messages. And we're going to look at those now in the cross-complaint, right? Text messages, FBI analysis, so that's obviously from the police report, and other parts of the investigation into the shooting. So he's actually referring to the actual investigative report, which we haven't been able to see so far as I understand it, which in a way gives us a first look at that. But it also kind of raises a really interesting question, which is that investigative report imminent? Is it about to come out anyway? And isn't Baldwin in a cross-complaint suing these other crew members, isn't he effectively controlling that narrative? He's saying, yes, you know what, there was negligence, and it was you, and you who were negligent. In that sense, he's controlling that narrative. Whereas if he didn't do this, and it came out from the district attorney, the public perception would be, wow, the Rust production was really negligent. Them saying it was really negligent. Now he's saying that, and owning it, but sort of directing at somebody else, right? Quite clever, isn't it? Then I just want to highlight this article. It's from Insider, and it just simply says what they say in the suit. More than anyone else, let's just do that. More than anyone else on set, Baldwin has been wrongfully viewed as the perpetrator of this tragedy. Is that fair? Like, is it fair that should somebody else be viewed as the perpetrator? Like, should somebody else be more kind of under the cosh? Or if so, who? So if you imagine there is kind of negligence all over, but there's one person who held the gun and who seemed, I don't think it was part of the set. I don't think somebody said fire the gun. Someone elected either to fire the gun or it went off by itself. That's kind of a legal question. But the issue is somebody else responsible for the gun firing while it's in Baldwin's hand, while it's with Baldwin, right? Status Quo says, thanks for that, says state DA should demand shelving the film. I don't know if they can. Cash says, made my night. Thanks a lot for that. Okay, so now let's go on to the complaint. Let's get there. Okay. And we're going to start with nature of the case. We're not going to read through everything. We do want to get to some of the images in those texts, but let's kind of get started. On October 21st, 2021, an accidental shooting took the life of cinematographer Alina Hutchins. Do you guys agree that that is accurate? That it was an accidental shooting? Do you guys agree? I agree with that. I don't think anyone tried to shoot her intentionally. That was just outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. Baldwin was holding the gun that shot the bullet. I find that quite interesting how he was holding the gun that shot the bullet. So it's not it's not Baldwin who discharged the firearm. The firearm discharged the firearm. It discharged while rehearsing a scene after Baldwin pulled back, then released the hammer. This tragedy occurred on a movie set, not a gun range, not a battlefield, not a location where even a remote possibility should exist. that a gun would contain live ammunition. Isn't that a little disingenuous to say, it's not a gun range, that's true. It's not a battlefield, it's true. But I think there is a remote possibility that a situation like that could exist, because it's a cowboy movie. There are firearms all over the place. So it's for that specific remote possibility that they need those safety protocols, right? It's not just any movie set. It's a movie set that's particularly highly stocked in firearms and in ammunition, dummy rounds, and that sort of thing. Anyway, it occurred under the supervision of a professional armorer, Gutierrez Reed, and the first assistant director, Halls, who were hired to protect the actors and crew on set. This tragedy happened because live bullets were delivered to the set and loaded into the gun. Gutierrez Reed failed to check the bullets or the gun carefully. Now, that's true, but it's incomplete. The tragedy happened, yes, because live bullets were delivered to the set. But the other side to that is, what about protocols that should have been in place anyway? What about, why was Gutierrez Reed hired in the first place? Was Gutierrez Reed a professional armorer? Right? Was she the right person for the job? Anyway, Gutierrez Reed failed to check the bullets or the gun carefully. Halls failed to check the gun carefully and yet announced the gun was safe. And Zachary failed to disclose that Gutierrez Reed had been acting recklessly offset and was a risk to those around her. Well, you can see where this is going. I think you could also ask the question, Gutierrez Reed failed to check, Halls failed to check. Well, what about Baldwin? Did Baldwin check? Should Baldwin have checked? What do other actors say? Also, even if he didn't check, should he have directed the firearm in a certain direction, yes or no? Then I think another question that should be addressed is, did he pull the trigger, and yes or no? And also, was he required to pull the trigger based on the script at that moment? And then number 3, if he did elect to pull the trigger, where does that take you? Number 2, Baldwin did not know and had no reason to know any of these facts. Do you guys agree with that? That he had no reason to know about that things weren't being checked. So he was the producer, he was the lead actor, and he was handed the firearm. Did he ask any questions perhaps about that? Were there any issues, prior issues? So something that could be missing, I mean, we're only on page 1. Does this refer to previous incidents? Because if it does, then that addresses this question, could he have known any of this? In other words, were there previous incidents that the higher-ups in the crew knew about? Anyway, cross-defendants did know about it. So would the assistant director, if he knew about it, wouldn't he have mentioned anything to the lead actor? Wouldn't he have said anything? Wouldn't there have been murmurings amongst the crew? What does Deb say? Deborah says, we learned in the military as well as civilian life to do a safety check on receiving a weapon. Thanks for that. Stephanie says, new safety protocols need to be put on safe. If it is not protocol for actor or any person holding the gun to check it first. You would imagine that there should be safety protocols at every level, from the beginning to the end. Anyway, he goes on to say, these cross-defendants are professionals who owed a duty to those on set. And there's also questions surrounding that. Was Gutierrez Reed really that professional? Was she really that experienced? Or was she actually inexperienced? So what happens when a professional hires someone who's inexperienced? Do they just automatically become professional? Who is responsible when someone is hired that's not that experienced? Is the person that's inexperienced responsible, or the person who hired them? Anyway, it says those cross defendants owed a duty to those on set, including to Baldwin, to keep the set safe. I think one can also ask, did Baldwin have a duty to keep anyone safe? I mean, this was his a pet project. And I think one can kind of, just in a general sense, ask just kind of an open question. What did Baldwin do to make things safer, right? You could say it's got nothing to do with him, he's just an actor. But Baldwin's quite a influential personality, he's quite a powerful presence. Did he make statements during the filming to address safety, right? Another thing that's, I think, quite interesting is when Helena was shot, did Baldwin try to assist her? Did he try and help her? Did he try and save her life? Did he try and do CPR? In other words, in terms of safety and protection and helping someone, the moment after Helena was shot, did Baldwin try and help the victim? It's kind of the same question that was asked with the Chris Watts case, where he said, something happened to my children. Okay, well, did you try and help them? Did you perform CPR, right? What do you think the answer is to that? Anyway, everyone on set, including Baldwin, expected and trusted them to do so. Hutchins never would have instructed Baldwin to point the gun in her direction and pull back the hammer if she thought the slightest possibility. Let me bring that up. So can you see here, the cross complaint makes it a fact that Hutchins instructed Baldwin, kind of indirectly, to point the gun in her direction and pull the hammer back. I wonder whether that is what other people will say. Did Helena say, point the gun at me, point the gun in my direction? Did she say that? If she thought the slightest possibility existed that it was loaded. I think the other side of it is, did she think the slightest possibility existed that a trigger would be pulled or that it would just discharge? Anyway, Baldwin, who shared the same state of mind as Hutchins in that critical moment, wouldn't have done so under such conditions. I think, broadly speaking, all of that is right to say no one could have anticipated, or no one should have anticipated, that there would be a live round. I don't know, that's kind of a rhetorical question. Should people have anticipated that possibility? Shouldn't people have anticipated that possibility? Number three, there can be no doubt that others have suffered from cross-defendants' negligence far more than Baldwin has. Hutchins lost her life and her young child lost his mother. Producer Joel Souza was shot in the shoulder and has suffered physical and emotional pain. Though by no means comparable, Baldwin must live with the immense grief and the resulting emotional, physical, and financial toll caused by the fact that the cross-defendants, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Baldwin seeks to clear his name and hold co-defendants accountable. Then deals with the parties. Baldwin is an individual and a resident of New York, New York. Baldwin is informed and believes that Gutierrez Reed is an individual and resident of Arizona. She was the armorer and assistant props master for the Rust production. And then it just goes to the rest of that: jurisdiction and venue, factual allegations, background. Rust is conceived. Baldwin is an actor and producer who's appeared in over 100 films and documentaries through his decades-long career. Now, you would think that is a factor here. A very experienced actor, wouldn't he know? Wouldn't he be very familiar with protocols? And if he's seeing a protocol, we're seeing negligence, or didn't he see negligence? But if he did see it, did he say something? Should he say something? Wouldn't there be cost implications if something's not happening and you say, well, we need more safety? Would there be a cost implication there? Was that a part of the story? In 2018, Baldwin partnered with Sousa on a draft script. Baldwin had previously been in talks to act in one of his prior films. The Western Rust tells the story of a young boy, quite ironic, who accidentally kills a local rancher. Although Baldwin was not specifically looking to film a Western, he was attracted to the Rust project because it offered an opportunity to work with Sousa. It's quite interesting that they say that, because it does make you wonder. Baldwin has got 7 or 8 children. Wouldn't they want to see their father in this heroic role, right? Wouldn't they want to see that? And wouldn't he want to be seen by them in this role besides other people? Because it's kind of like a father or grandfather figure coming to the heroic rescue of a young boy. Baldwin collaborated with Sousa on the writing of the script. Rust production. So what this tells you is that he was given a story by credit for his work. It tells you that this is the brainchild, it's the pet project, the passion project of Baldwin. In fact, the name of the movie is really taken from the name of the central character, Harlan Rust, which is acted by Baldwin himself. Then it talks about financing, budget, and all that kind of thing. I'm not going to go through that. Here's an email from producer Winterstein regarding filming dates and locations. Not going to go through that. This is just dealing with how it came about. And here's the hiring of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. Baldwin had no role in hiring Gutierrez-Reed. He didn't know she was being considered as the armorer and didn't recommend her or weigh in on her hiring. So that may be true, but didn't he notice her when he was on set? Didn't he notice this young person doing things on a day-to-day basis? I mean, he's the lead character. Didn't he notice her after she was hired? Instead, Gutierrez-Reed had reached out to Kenny to ask whether he knew of any available armorer jobs. Kenny connected her with Zachary, who then passed her name along to Rust production managers, who ultimately hired her. Did the Rust production managers never ever communicate to Baldwin? Didn't they ever send a text message saying, well, we've got a problem here, throughout the entire shooting? The procurement of the ammunition and prop weapons. Zachary and Gutierrez-Reed. So now we're going to start dealing with photos. Zachary and Gutierrez-Reed were responsible for sourcing and procuring the weapons and ammunition used on the Rust set. Kenny and his company PDQ were the primary weapons supplier. Police photos of Kenny's business show what Zachary and Gutierrez-Reed would have encountered on their visit should they have put them on notice of serious safety concerns. So here arises a really interesting question. Was it only Zachary and Gutierrez-Reed who went to PDQ? So nobody else in this crew ever went there? And when they came back, did they not say anything to anyone about what they encountered there? Anyway, have a look at this mess. Look how messy that is, although this is in the, looks like it's the back garden area. Boxes lying there. This is sort of outside kind of the business premises. And then this is, I think, inside. There's a bicycle. And yeah, it does look quite messy. Clothing lying all over the place. It looks like a pillowcase with something in it, right? Ammunition, much of it unlabeled, was strewn throughout the premises. So this is much closer. there you can see a bag of something, looks like something inside there. Right beside that, and just cloths, and what is that pointing out there? Um, is that medication or something? I'm not quite sure what that is. There's kind of a bunch of rounds, looks like some tape over there. It is fairly disorganized. Let's see if we can locate either that or that over here. Not sure if it's next to this box. Look at all those rounds or those cartridge cases lying over there. Okay. It says here, live ammunition and dummy rounds were stored haphazardly. So it's not very organized, is it? Look at that. Some rounds lying outside, another one, another one, another one, another one. There's a box labeled live ammo. And I guess that's where it is at the bottom there. How does that look? Bria says, this is scary. No wonder half the staff had left the project the day before. Sorry. Pauline says, mixed in with trash. Yeah, that's right. Pooh's Blustery Day says, these photos make me want to clean. So you can see there's kind of a mishmash of ammunition. It's not very organized, is it? So let's go back to the documentation. Live ammunition and dummy rounds were stored haphazardly. As professional suppliers of dummy and blank ammunition, Kenny and PDQ were required to carefully store, segregate, label, I would also say catalog, organized ammunition, but they failed to do so. It does look like that, doesn't it? Instead, Kenny and PDQ stored inventory without proper labels, segregation, or organization. Their cavalier disregard for proper separation between live and dummy ammunition was one of the factors that led to the presence of live ammunition on the set of Rust. That seems like a fair statement, right? According to Kenny's insurance company, Farmers Insurance Exchange, after Mr. Kenny and his business tendered their defense to farmers in May 2022, Mr. Kenny's attorney suggested that PDQ Arm & Profit operated from the property. Specifically, he said Mr. Kenny communicated his willingness to be part of the Rust production, negotiated the terms of that participation, sent the gun and ammunition involved in the incident, and sent invoices for that gun and ammunition from the property. So when you look at these images, doesn't it make you think that an accident was inevitable? When you look at these images, that it wasn't really an accident, that it was something that was inevitable, it was bound to happen. The FBI analyzed a substantial amount of ammunition that was collected from the Rust set and found dozens of live cartridges. Item 31 alone contained 50 live cartridges. So can you see next to everywhere where it says live, that's an indication of live rounds, right? Kate, thanks a lot. Kate is so glad to catch you live. I watched every replay, but love being here with you all. Good to have you here. Faticus, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thanks. I haven't seen you for a while. So here you can see these are all evidence items, right? This comes out of the police report, I assume. Evidence items, that's redacted. It's quite interesting that that's redacted. I wonder, doesn't this say Baldwin? No, maybe not. Not quite sure what that refers to, but it's redacted. That's redacted. That refers to live, live between all these dummy cartridges. Live. That's a lot of live rounds. You guys agree? It's a lot of live ammunition. It's not incidental. It's actually egregious. The amount is actually crazy. Let's just have a look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So around about 12 separate instances of live rounds. That's not 12 live rounds, that's 12 areas where there were kind of collections of live rounds, right? In other words, it was all over the place, distributed everywhere. So what you kind of are seeing here is at the first port of call, the prop supplier problem, they're sending live rounds onto the set. Now the next port of call, the next port of safety is, I guess, the props people. Are they now going to carefully find out that they're live rounds or not? And if not, well, then it's going to go to the next level. It's going to go into actual firearms, right? And I do think if this didn't happen on the 21st of October, it may well have happened the very next day or the day after that. Do you remember when Alec Baldwin went onto ABC? He kind of made it seem like there was one live round. He said he kind of made it like this 1 in a trillion possibility, this 1 in a trillion event. He said a live round. How did a live round, like a live round, one live round, make it on set? Well, actually, there were, I think, hundreds of live rounds, right? It says here, item 31 alone, that's this item here, that's the last one. Cartridges from item 30 tray, right? Item 31 alone contained 50 live cartridges. And so I think the answer is actually that there were probably more than 100 live rounds on that set, right? That's a lot of rounds lying around that you've got to somehow identify, otherwise something could go wrong. And the interesting thing is when Gutierrez Reed was in the police station, as memory serves, she was shown, I think, a live round, and I think she was asked if it's live or not. I'm not sure if she was absolutely certain what the difference was between that live round and another one, because there were two possibilities. One was where a hole was drilled into it. Another one was where I think if you shook it, it made a noise. And then I think a third one was it was light or something like that. It had a plastic cap. I'm not an expert in this, but you kind of got a sense that I don't really know when to speak without seeing it in front of me, but you kind of got a sense that when she was actually confronted with a live round and asked, "Is this round live or not?" I'm not 100% sure if she got that, if she assessed that one accurately. But I think even if she did know the difference, the question is, was that checking done in a systematic, organized, and careful way, with the emphasis being simply on careful? And I don't know about you, but the impression I get is I was careful, you weren't. Then the next person, I was careful, you weren't. Next person, I was careful, you weren't. And then you kind of got to ask, well, wasn't there just a low level of carefulness overall? I want to quickly see if I can find where Hannah Gutierrez Reed is asked about the live round. If I can find it. Am I gonna probably not gonna be able to find it at short notice? Okay. Anyway, I'll maybe come back to that. So let's go on to the next section. The results clearly show that live ammunition ended up on the rust prop cart. So what that's really telling you is that it made it from the arms store into the arms, the prop department, and then from there onto the prop cart, which is where the actors and the crew would, that would be like the last part where the actor would pick up the weapon, or the assistant director. That would be the area where they would, what's the word, basically shop for the items that they needed in a particular scene, right? So these are crime scene evidence photos. It's, I presume, one of these is a live round. I think that is a live round. This is from the top of cart over there. Presume that's a live round. You don't see any hole in that. I presume that that is the same as that. Although there's no reference to a number 3 there. But anyway, there we go. Then it also says it also ended up in the bandolier worn by Baldwin. So there were live rounds in his actual bandolier. I'm not quite sure what this means, but I assume it means that 2 of these are live rounds. That 2 of these are live rounds. That 2 of those are live rounds. Okay, the FBI report on the incident shows multiple cartridges of live ammunition seized on the premises of PDQ during the execution of a search warrant, and that ammunition was commingled on the premises. So it's quite an interesting question. Where did live rounds commingle? Were they commingled at PDQ, or were they commingled on the set, or both? What do you guys think? Kenny also submitted cartridges to the police that contained live ammunition. As prop supplier, Kenny and PDQ should not have stored live ammunition on the same disorganized premises, let alone commingled it. And so look at all of that, live, 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 live. Baldwin arrives on the Rust set, receives gun safety training, and begins filming. On Monday, October 11, this was 10 days before the incident, Baldwin arrived on the set of Rust at the Bonanza Creek Ranch in Bonanza City, New Mexico, several miles southwest of Santa Fe. The day after he arrived, Baldwin had training with Gutierrez Reed, Rust's armorer. Training lasted around 90 minutes. During the session, Gutierrez Reed reminded Baldwin of gun safety measures he had learned at substantially similar gun trainings throughout his career, such as always putting the gun down immediately once cut is called, and not to force the gun if it jams. I'm sort of looking at this and wondering what's missing from here. What didn't she remind him of, or what should he have known based on substantially similar gun training throughout his career? Point 54, Gutierrez Reed did not instruct Baldwin to check the gun himself. So does that make it her responsibility? If you had an inexperienced armorer not telling a very experienced actor to check the gun himself, then does he not check the gun himself? It's quite an interesting legal question. You've got the producer of a film, the lead actor, the guy who's holding the gun, and you've got quite an inexperienced armorer. So if she doesn't tell you to check the gun, do you not check it? Do you not know, based on all the other movies you did, what those protocols are? In fact, she told Baldwin it was her job to check the gun, not his. So if you've got a 22-year-old, I'm not quite sure how old she is, 22, 23, telling him something, and he's, how old is he? 60 something. Is Baldwin the kind of guy, if you tell him something, okay, sorry, I will do what you say. I mustn't check the gun. I will do exactly as you say. I will follow your rules. Is Baldwin the kind of guy, if you tell him to do something, he will, I'm sorry, I don't want to upset you. Okay, I won't check the gun. Yeah, her father is a legendary armorer. Yeah, that's quite well said. Baldwin believed, based on prior gun safety training he received, that actors should not unilaterally check guns for live ammunition. He said that in the ABC News thing, but other actors have said otherwise. Nicolas Cage said something different. George Clooney, I think, said something different as well. It would be interesting to know whether the other actors on this set, what they did. Like a guy called, what's his name? Fimmel. What did he do? Did he ever check? If actors want to check a gun for their own peace of mind, they should check the gun only with the armorer closely supervising the process. In other words, actors may jointly inspect a gun with the armorer, but never on their own. Baldwin had been told during prior gun safety trainings that a gun must be rechecked and cleared by the armorer if the actor unilaterally checks the gun without the armorer's supervision. Baldwin followed Gutierrez Reed's instructions during the gun safety training and throughout his time on the Rust set. Now, I seem to remember from Gutierrez Reed's filing, I think she accused Baldwin of, I think she said she asked him to attend cross-draw training. And according to her, he didn't attend that. So I don't know whether that is addressed in this complaint, whether there was an occasion where she offered him training, but he didn't attend that. Soon after arriving on set, Baldwin had dinner with Hutchins, Russ cinematographer or director of photographer, and the director. At dinner, they discussed their creative vision. Hutchins, Baldwin, and Sousa believed they were onto something special. They did not discuss safety at that dinner. At no point did Baldwin discuss gun safety with anyone beyond Gutierrez Reed, Zachary, Nicole Montoya, and Halls. Nicole Montoya was, I think, Sarah Zachary's cousin or related to her. Could even have been a younger sister, but I think she was a teenager. From the moment Baldwin arrived, the morale on the set and the camaraderie crew was apparent. Everyone seemed to be enjoying the experience. I don't know whether the 6 people who walked off the set will agree with that. Rust filming was proceeding smoothly. I don't know if they would agree with that either. Baldwin believed that the cast had high morale and it formed a sense of camaraderie. I don't know if those 6 who left the production that day would tend to agree with that. Baldwin believed that the cast, okay, as the film's key second assistant director, wrote in an email to the cast on October 11, 2021, the day Baldwin arrived on set. What an incredible first week. Thank you guys for your incredible patience as we work through the schedule changes. Can't wait for this week. So that is related to this email. So this was an email from the second assistant director sent on October 11. So obviously it's a positive email. Are there any negative emails? During his time at Bonanza Creek Ranch, Baldwin never personally observed, was informed of, or became aware of any safety issues on Rust's set. So it seems almost like it's repeated. He didn't know about safety issues, didn't know about safety issues, didn't know about safety issues. When he arrived on October 21st, did he not know that people had walked off the set because of safety issues? Late in the day of October 20th, Baldwin had a brief conversation with Lane Looper. Looper thanked Baldwin for his support on social media. During their conversation, Looper told Baldwin, well, there you go. During their conversation, Looper told Baldwin that the set of Rust had some problems. The only problem that Looper mentioned was his desire for better hotel rooms. Looper never mentioned any issues regarding gun safety. Baldwin asked Looper if he would be on set the following day and said they could continue to speak about the hotel issue then. Baldwin, so it's quite interesting, Baldwin knows about a hotel issue. So Baldwin has to do with things like the script, and he's the lead actor, but it turns out that he knows about hotel issues. Baldwin intended to consider the matter, and if he agreed that different hotel rooms were needed for Looper's camera crew, and he would pay for them out of his own compensation. However, Looper and his team later decided to quit the Rust crew. So there's a short little mention of that. They should actually say that Looper and his team quit the Rust crew on that day, on the day of the incident. I mean, they left that morning. On October 21st, 2021, the Rust cast and crew were preparing to rehearse a scene in the small church at Bonanza Creek Ranch. In the scene, Baldwin's character, Harlan Rust, takes cover in the church after a shootout. The scene involves a close-up view of a firearm, a gun held by Rust that he is required to cock before a shootout begins of shotguns booming and Colts exploding. The scene unfolds as follows, with bracketed ellipses to shorten the script. Interior church. Lucas hauls Rust in. They collapse in a pew. Lucas propping him back up. Rust groaning in pain, breath labored. Lucas, I'm gonna find some help. Rust, don't need no damn help. Lucas, you're gonna die if I don't. Blood already pooling under the pew. Lucas, I'll go find someone. Just wait here. Exterior town. Lucas comes out, goes looking for help. Wooden base joined out on the porch now by the LaFontaines and Reed and Miller, checking weapons, tying down holsters. Interior church. A door opens quietly. Wooden base enter. Colts level. Rust in a pew up ahead. Back to them. Wooden base fanning out. Wood, Harlan Rust. He doesn't answer, doesn't move, nothing. Wood, want you to stand up nice and slow. Toss any weapons you got. Russ still, hand moving almost unnoticeably. Slips a Colt from its holster. Wood advancing slowly. Wood. Jack. Reed and Miller come in the front, rifles up, fanning slowly. Wood continued. Ain't no iteration you walk out of this church less than you stand up slow and toss them guns. Russ Colt cocked quietly now. Interior of church. Wood and his men spin. All Russ needs, Colts exploding. The morning of October 21, 2021. On the morning of October 21, Hutchins, Susan Baldwin convened in the church to discuss how to film an insert shot of the gun. This is essentially a close-up focused on the gun. When the cast and crew broke for lunch, Russ armorer Gutierrez Reed took the gun from Baldwin that he had been holding in rehearsals. Gutierrez Reed relieved Baldwin of the weapon most of the time. At other times, however, due to space limitations on set, Gutierrez Reed was asked to clear the set after checking the weapons. As far as I know, there was also the issue of the pandemic, that they couldn't be at close quarters because of the pandemic. So you couldn't have too many people inside the church because of that as well. Gutierrez Reed was asked to clear the set after checking weapons. In Gutierrez Reed's absence, Baldwin was relieved of the weapon by Halls, Russ' assistant director, who was also responsible for handling guns on set. On that day, Gutierrez Reed relieved Baldwin of the gun shortly before lunch. Unbeknownst to Baldwin, a chain of mistakes by cross-defendants had already been set in motion that would lead to the tragic loss of Hutchins's life that afternoon. The key responsibility of the armorer and the props master is to ensure the security and safety of the gun, ammunition, or props. On the morning of October 21, Zachary and Gutierrez Reed arrived on the Russ set to find that a box full of dummy ammunition had mysteriously appeared. The box had markings similar to those used by Kenny and PDQ to denote dummy ammunition. Zachary knew about Gutierrez Reed misplacing things and mixing them up, yet as far as Baldwin is aware, made no complaints to the production company or others on set. Now, as soon as you say, as far as Baldwin is aware, well, you've now got to assume that he wasn't aware. The only way you would know if he was aware is if you could get his phone, right? If you could get his phone and look at his phone. Made no complaints to the production company or others on the set. Crew members have also since reported that Gutierrez Reed took the prop guns So I don't know if this is a reference to plinking. You guys remember plinking came up at a certain point. So this says that she took the prop guns to a shooting range where she loaded them with live ammunition and did target practice. Did she do that by herself? Did she take any crew with her? Did any other crew know that she was doing that? But I think that does extend our knowledge base to some extent. It's a good point, Bria. Okay, so let's look at this email. Looks like it's from Weston Brownlee to Sarah Zachary. On the 21st of October, 11:54. hey, you may know this and it's hearsay, but I'm telling you this because it's info you should have especially given the investigation. I just heard from someone claiming they know the driver of your prop truck, that the armorer allegedly went out target shooting last night with a gun Alec had and then fired. So the day before, I don't know if that 11:54 is at night, but this seems like something that was sent after the incident, on the day of the incident, that Gutierrez Reed took the actual gun, loaded it with live ammunition, and then took it to a shooting range and fired live ammunition from it. There's your box of rounds you said you don't know where they came from. Given what you told me about the armorer misplacing things and mixing them up, there's the live rounds right there. I would disclose that to the police if that's not info you already knew. That's quite big. That's quite a big statement. Yeah, so there you see it, 11:54 p.m. So that was close to midnight that day, around about 9 hours after the incident occurred. Status red. Number 70, Gutierrez Reed professes to have no knowledge as to the origin of this ammunition. You think that that is true? So can you see it refers here to a mysterious, a full box of dummy ammunition had mysteriously appeared. And there is a reference to that. That's where it came from. It mysteriously appeared from Sarah's perspective. And I think Gutierrez Reed couldn't explain where it came from. She had no knowledge of the origin of the ammunition. Gutierrez Reed stated that her complaint against Kenny, she was happy that they had a full box of dummy rounds to work with because Sarah had brought dummy boxes to the set in the past. She didn't think any more of it at the time. Regardless, Gutierrez Reed and Zachary maintained a workspace that was as recklessly disorganized as PDQ. So, can you say that whose responsibility is it that the prop supplier, that premises is disorganized? You might say, well, the armorers and the prop people going there should have said something. Well, now it turns out that the armorer and the prop person, their workspace is also very disorganized. But then it makes you wonder, didn't someone on set see that? Didn't someone on set notice that? Do crew ever talk to one another? Do crew ever interact with one another? So this is obviously on set. These are crime scene photos from on the set of Rust. Look at these cartridges sort of lying all over the place. There's another one. Loose ammunition was found in the prop truck. Loose ammunition was found in the prop cart. I think it should be on the prop cart. Oh, there's the prop cart. And I guess that's somewhere on the prop cart. Loose ammunition was found in bags. I think that is the fanny pack that Hannah Gutierrez Reed carried around. I know it was grey. Storing ammunition in an organized manner offers an important layer of security that is required by the armorer profession. By leaving loose ammunition around the set and prop areas, Gutierrez, Reed, and Zachary had no way of knowing where each piece of ammunition used in the prop guns originated. Now, what I remember from, I wish I had it in front of me, but what I do remember was at some point, I think the LA Times covered this, but at some point, Gutierrez Reed, I think, said she sent an email to, I don't know if it's Pickle or some other producer. It could have been another producer, basically asking for a cart. And then I think the producer kind of responded saying, well, go to Walmart and get one. You know, don't wait for us. Go to Walmart and get one. And so it was kind of a weird thing of the armorer is saying, I need a prop cart. And the producer's saying, well, go and get one. And so it's like a situation of whose responsibility is that? And it appears that what ultimately happened was she solved the problem because she's kind of running with lots of guns at the same time by using this fanny, what do they call it? Fanny pack. And ultimately, a prop card, I think, was provided, or she did buy it, right? Okay. So that is true. Storing ammunition should be done in an organized manner, but did nobody else notice that it wasn't organized? Did nobody else notice that after, I don't know, is it 21 days of shooting or 10 days of shooting? Did nobody notice that Hannah wasn't very organized? Did nobody notice that it was quite chaotic, that mistakes were being made? By leaving loose ammunition around, Gutierrez, Reed, and Zachary had no way of knowing where each piece of ammunition used in the prop guns originated. That's true. There was also a failure to secure weapons. I think that's inside the prop truck. So look at these weapons in kind of cardboard boxes. There's a rifle beside a safe, looks like. Police photos confirm that guns were also stored loaded. This is another egregious safety violation. Well, there you can see, looks like a pretty old rifle. I'm not sure if it's being held by law enforcement, but that glove makes me think it could be. Yeah, that glove is definitely a law enforcement type glove, and there you can see it's stored with a, I don't know if that's a live round, but it's certainly got a round inside it. Deborah says everyone should have organized, especially the experienced cast. Stephanie says this is pretty damning. Love Tina says absolute no right there. Even the bandolier that Zachary gave to Baldwin, and which Baldwin was wearing on his body, contained live ammunition. We've already kind of dealt with that. Specifically, the FBI report concluded that double base smokeless powder, a propellant used in firearms, was identified in a cartridge taken from Baldwin's bandolier. Gutierrez, Reed, and Zachary negligently performed their duties in numerous other ways leading up to and during the morning of October 21st. Before loading a weapon, an armorer must check each round to ensure that it is a dummy round. Dummy rounds from afar look like regular ammunition, but they contain a small metal ball, a BB, inside of them. Dummy rounds are distinguishable Upon close visual examination by a trained professional, they have a hole in the casing, or upon shaking, they should rattle. It is imperative that the armorer shake one dummy round at a time to ensure that each round rattles from the BB inside. On the other hand, if the armorer shakes multiple rounds at one time, the rattling could be coming from only one of the rounds. FBI analysis confirms that Gutierrez-Reed's fingerprints were on the ammunition box from which Baldwin's weapon was loaded. That's kind of both a good sign and a bad sign. It's good that she was involved. So in other words, if her fingerprints weren't there, you could say, why didn't you check? Or didn't you check? On the other hand, it's potentially bad because it may show that she handled the rounds, did check, but did she check properly? Before loading the gun, Gutierrez-Reed claims that she only shook the ammunition box and heard a jingling sound. That actually, I think, tells you everything, right? That is the kind of thing you would expect from someone who is inexperienced. They pick up the whole box, shake the box. Oh, dummy rounds, that's all I needed to know. In other words, it's a certain standard of care, but not high enough. You need to check every single round in that box because you are, in a way, taking the lazy approach. Oh, these are dummy rounds, right? Yeah, there'd been two prior misfires on set, but that is a big statement that she shook the ammunition box and through that decided that those were all dummy rounds. She didn't check each round individually. So that's quite a big, uh, that kind of changes things. So she actually said this. She said, I shook the ammunition box, heard a jingling sound, which is what a dummy round box should sound like. No, and it's not what the dummy round box should sound like, it's what the rounds should sound like, right? Gutierrez-Reed further claims that she checked each, so that actually explains how the error was made, right? That is actually mystery solved, is that Hannah shook the box and then from that point took whatever rounds randomly out of it and fed it into the firearm. That was how a potential live round could have made it in. It's not a once in a trillion thing. It's a once in a silly mistake thing, right? People make mistakes all the time. Gutierrez-Reed further claims that she checked each round individually before loading it into the chamber of Baldwin's prop gun. She concedes, however, that while checking, she noticed that one of the rounds lacked a hole in the casing. She did not remove the round, prevent the gun from being used in a subsequent scene, or alert anyone on set that the gun was unsafe. So I don't know what you think about that. Do you believe her when she says she shook the box and then she checked every single round and then one of them didn't have a hole in the casing, but she didn't think anything about it? She could be telling the truth. On the other hand, why would she shake the whole box? Suppose maybe she would have. As the facts show, Gutierrez-Reed failed to perform her job carefully, and as a result, a live round was loaded into the gun that she had negligently failed to identify. I think another aspect to this was they were just coming off lunch, and having come off lunch, you sort of have a situation of almost like, come on, guys, we need to get back on schedule. And so, okay, quickly, I need to get this gun ready. So, if you didn't complete the loading of the gun before lunch, well, now you're going to do it after lunch and quickly. So that lunch interruption was really crucial to all of this. In her interview with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, Gutierrez-Reed said that before lunch on October 21, she loaded Baldwin's gun with 5 dummy rounds, but not 6. The 6th and final round would not go into the gun because the gun was dirty. Why was it dirty? Possibly because she'd used it the day before, the night before. After lunch, she cleaned the gun, which would have taken a little bit of time, and put another round in, which brought the total to 6 rounds. She stated that the guns were checked on set. However, she admitted that she didn't really check the gun given to Baldwin too much because it had been locked up at lunch. So what do you think that means to say, I didn't really check? I suppose it could mean that she shook the box and said, okay, these are all dummy rounds, and then did that. Or she lost track of how many rounds she did check. Okay, 1, 2, lunch, come back. I can't remember how many I checked, but don't worry, I did shake the box. After the incident, Halls brought Gutierrez-Reed the gun. She opened it up and noticed that one of the dummies had been discharged. She admitted to the sheriff that when she checked the gun, the projectile portion of the discharged round was gone. She also said that it looked like a realistic bullet and that many of the dummies had primer in the hole, but the discharged bullet did not. Although she said she had checked the other rounds and that each had a ringing sound when she shook it, which is indicative that it was a dummy, she admitted that the box of dummies contained some wonky rounds. She stated that already tells you, just that language tells you that there's some kind of clumsiness going on. She stated that there may have been just a bad round in the box. Gutierrez-Reed's admissions demonstrate a failure to properly check the gun. Now, this deals with the afternoon of October 21, 2021. SW Firefly says, I'm literally in shock listening to this. I cannot believe the incompetence. Alina says, what does the shaking the box do? Well, you hear rattling, which tells you that there are dummy rounds inside. Okay. When the cast and crew returned from lunch and resumed preparations for rehearsal, Halls handed Baldwin the gun. While handing the gun to Baldwin, Halls announced, we have a cold gun on set. There is a little bit of uncertainty about that. There's a little bit of I'm not 100% sure whether Halls will say that. Anyway, cold gun is a widely accepted and significant term. The announcement of a cold gun is meant to assure all present. I think when a gun is loaded with live rounds, then it's called hot gun or something like that. Halls later admitted to script supervisor Mamie Mitchell before handing the gun to Baldwin that he checked the revolver drum and noticed that one round was different from the others. Mitchell claims that he noted that 5 of the bullets were marked and 1 was not, although this account conflicts with Hall's own statement. So this is what Mamie Mitchell says. It's not what Halls said in his official statement. So in a way, if this is true, it means that Halls may have actually seen that there was a live round. And he may have, I'm just saying it's possible, that Halls may have seen that there was a live round and for whatever reason either failed to check it or made some other assumption. Anyway, let's just have a look at that. May says, love this intelligent group. Thanks a lot for your super chat, May. Appreciate it. Ria says, she didn't check, he didn't check, he didn't check, they didn't check. it seems like nobody checked. So Mitchell claims that he noted that 5 of the bullets were marked, 1 was not. Although this account conflicts with Hall's own statement, it is apparent that Hall's either failed to check the gun or failed to voice any concern about the red flag he observed when he checked it. Either failure constitutes negligence, given that Halls is the safety coordinator. Thanks a lot, Fedicus. I think that's your second super chat. Really appreciate it. Either failure constitutes negligence. Okay. Page 26 of 39. Point number 90. When receiving the gun and relying on Hall's representation that it was cold, Baldwin did as he had always done and had been taught to do throughout his career, always without incident. To me, that's a little bit like saying Baldwin did as he was told. He was told cold gun, and then, you know, I do as I'm told, right? What I find a little bit curious about this, and tell me what you think about this. In the story, in the story of Baldwin in his movie, he's like a good boy. He does as he's told, right? Just follow me when I say this. Within the narrative of the events leading to the Rust incident, Baldwin is like this good boy who just does as he's told. And like the assistant director will tell him what to do. It's cold gun, okay, it's cold gun, right? And the armorer will tell him, I will tell you it's safe, or I will hand it to you. In other words, everyone has agency apparently except him, right? That's within the Rust story. Now, if you go outside of the Rust story, it's kind of like a situation of you shouldn't really talk to the media because it's an ongoing investigation. Do you remember him saying that? Remember him going to the side of the road and saying, in Vermont, and saying, this is an active investigation. I'm not really supposed to say anything. But then he's been saying things all along. He's been saying things on Instagram. He's been saying things at the Boulder Film Festival. He's right. He went on to ABC News. So does he do as he's told? When they asked him to hand over his phone, was he a good boy and he gave over his phone? And I can go on and on with that. But what I'm trying to say is he seems to lack agency in his own movie, where he does as he's told and he stays in his lane. But as soon as it's outside of the movie, well, then he seems to be a different person. Okay. Then it says, specifically, an actor cannot rule that a gun is safe. Why not? Why can't he just look? Why can't he also just, it's simple. Is it making a rattling noise? Yes or no? Anyway, so that is somebody else's responsibility. It's not his. If actors open their own gun to confirm the absence of live ammunition outside of the armorer's close supervision, that gun should be repossessed by the armorer and cleared again. To Baldwin's knowledge, several other actors on the Rust set followed the same process, relying on an appropriate crew member's representation that a gun was cold. Now, on the one hand, I would say that makes sense, right? So let's say you've got a really experienced armorer, and the armorer checks that your gun is safe, right? Hands it to you. I would still say, well, maybe you should check it anyway, right? Maybe you should be the last line of defense, right? On the other hand, if you've got an inexperienced armorer, this is like your second job. Doesn't it behove you to check the gun yourself? And also the assistant director to check it more carefully than you normally would, right? In other words, in a situation where you've got an inexperienced armorer, where she's one of the youngest people in the entire crew, and she's kind of doing double duty. She's an armorer and a prop master. Shouldn't you, as a mature person, exercise a little bit of agency and say, you know what, I'm also going to check. Maybe she missed something. I guess it's easy to say in hindsight, but it seems a little bit strange to say this person must have 100% agency and I've got 0% in this situation. Isn't safety everyone's concern on a movie set dealing with firearms? Can you say safety is that person's concern, it's not my concern? Can you say safety is your concern, yours, but the person who's actually given the gun in the final analysis, you don't need to worry about safety at all. You can point the gun wherever you want. You can do whatever you want with the gun. Safety is not your concern. Can you say that? What if you turn this around and you say, what if all of these people were irresponsible? What if all of these people were negligent? What if all of these people were reckless? But the person who was given the gun right at the end of this conveyor was super careful and super aware of safety. And that person examined the firearm and also did a test. Would this also have happened? In other words, instead of there being 3 levels of safety, Seth Kenny, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, and Dave Halls, what if there was a 4th level? What if the 4th level or layer was a very experienced actor that had handled firearms his whole life? What if that really experienced actor had done one final check? What could have happened? Faticus says, I got you guys an audio on my ride to work, snowing in Western New York. Sounds good. Okay. Anyway, it's food for thought, right? It's an interesting way of turning it the other way. Isn't safety on set everyone's responsibility, not selectively certain people? Baldwin does not have a gun license, is not a gun owner, and is not a professional weapons expert. That's a fair point. Baldwin, like Hutchins and others on set, reasonably placed his trust in the cross defendants, experts that other people had hired to keep the set safe. It's also an interesting point. He reasonably placed his trust in the cross defendants. That, I think, is a legal question. Was it reasonable to place his trust, or wasn't it? Should he have expected a live round, or shouldn't he? It is an important question. Cash, thanks for that. Cash says, can we agree? Okay. Number 91, when the cast and crew resumed work after lunch, Hutchins continued to evaluate her camera angle for the scene inside the church. Now, what is quite important to mention here is because the camera crew, the first camera crew left, they took, I'm not sure if it's called a dolly, but they took a monitor apparatus, which you can use that to remote view a scene. And as a result of that being taken off the set, there was only one camera left, which meant I'm not sure what would have happened otherwise. I don't know if Helena would have been outside the church looking at the scene from a remote location. I don't know. I don't know if that is the alternative. But the fact is, because there's now only one camera, she had to be present in the way that she was present. I don't know whether it's a factor that had the first camera crew been present, would they actually have been the cinematographer? Would the cinematographer have been inside the church in the way that she was if there was a second camera present? I think the answer is yes, that she would have been anyway. but it does raise an interesting point, I think. Okay, let's continue. Guys in chat, please be nice to one another. I know some of you have different views on gun safety. We're trying to figure out what happened in this case, not what our respective views are on gun safety are. 92. In Baldwin's extensive experience, the cinematographer on a film or television set is a significant input into an actor's performance. While directors bear the ultimate responsibility, cinematographers have a similar responsibility as to what is or not in the composition of the frame. Hutchins therefore directed Baldwin accordingly. I think this is the part where he says, "She told me to point the gun at her." Baldwin was sitting in a church pew looking at Hutchins. Baldwin held the gun, which Halls had just announced was safe, in his hand. Hutchins was standing camera right, Baldwin's left, next to the camera operator, and looking back and forth between Baldwin to her right. So that is actually how she was unfortunately shot under her armpit, and the bullet passed through her in an upward direction, emerged, I think, near her shoulder, and then entered the director from that perspective. Hutchins she was trying to determine how best to angle the camera and what movements Baldwin should make for her to capture the cocked gun that the script called for. Baldwin asked Hutchins what she would like to see to prepare her camera angle for the scene. Baldwin pulled the gun out slowly without issue and held it still before Hutchins began giving any directions to him. So I think that's quite interesting that that is acknowledged, that he pulls the gun out slowly before Hutchins gave him any direction. So she didn't say, pull out the weapon. She didn't say, pull out the firearm. He elected to do that of his own volition. And to me, Baldwin seems to be a guy with a lot of agency. He seems to be a guy with a lot of confidence, a lot of independence. And so it makes sense that that is exactly what he did. Then it says, Hutchins described what she would like Baldwin to do with the placement of the gun, which contained only dummy rounds as far as everyone was told. She directed Baldwin to hold the gun higher to a point where it was directed toward her. She was looking carefully at the monitor and then at Baldwin and then back again as she gave these instructions. In giving and following these instructions, Hutchins and Baldwin shared a core vital belief that the gun was cold and contained no live rounds. Hutchins would have never told Baldwin to point the gun in her direction, and Baldwin would never have done so if either believed there was gun safety issues on set. So one thing that I think is quite interesting with that statement is, did Hutchins say, point the gun in my direction, or did she say, point the gun toward the camera? There's a difference. There's a difference between point the gun at me and point the gun at the camera, because it's the camera that needs to look into the barrel of the firearm, right? So the statement that Baldwin was supposed to point the gun at Hutchins doesn't really make sense, because the camera needed to see inside the firearm, not Hutchins. Baldwin asked Hutchins whether she wanted to see him cock the gun. So there again, you see a little bit of agency coming in. As the script required, she responded yes. Now, I think Mamie Mitchell said that this was a rehearsal. They weren't actually going to film. It was just to, I'm not quite sure what the correct statement is for it. I don't know if it's called a dry run, but it's basically nothing really happens. They just find their marks. They find how they need to do something. the camera wasn't actually rolling. Otherwise, you would have had all of this on camera, right? They're trying to find their marks. They're trying to find exactly how they need to move. So can you see, although it's being sketched as Hutchins was directing him, note Baldwin asks Hutchins whether you want me to do this. She responds yes. Isn't he directing her in a way? Baldwin tipped the gun down somewhat so that the lens of the camera would be able to focus on his hand's action. While performing this action, he said, "Am I holding it too far down? Do you see that?" So this is where it's quite interesting. Is he directing her to direct him, or is she directing him? If he's saying, "Do I need to hold it like this, like this, like this, like that?" But if he's saying that, who is directing who? Is Baldwin a kind of directing guy? Bear in mind, it's his own movie. It's a very important scene in his own movie. It's a movie where the name of the movie is based on the name of his character. He's the principal character. Who's directing who? He wrote the script. He co-wrote the script. It's his story. So who's really directing here? It's kind of a fine line. I mean, I think the court, or lawyers will ultimately decide what the answer is to that. But look how it's Baldwin asked Hutchins. Baldwin tipped the gun and asked Hutchins. Hutchins responded. Hutchins responded. Hutchins responded. Baldwin's actions. Baldwin acts. Hutchins responds. Who's directing who? Yeah, that's true. You never point a firearm in anyone's direction. Number 96. Baldwin then pulled back the hammer, as was required by the script. But the question is, was he required by the script to do that right then? It's a dry run. He doesn't really need to do that. I don't know. I'm asking the question. In that dry run, was it necessary to do that? To actually do that? Anyway, he pulled back the hammer, but not far enough to actually cock the gun. And I think you've got to ask the question, is that realistic? Is it realistic that you'd cock a gun, but not pull it really far back? I suppose you could say he tried to cock the gun and his finger slipped. But when you look at some of the analysis that we've seen on YouTube, when people show the same model, it's incredibly hard to cock that particular model firearm less than a quarter. I mean, there's almost nothing to cock, right? If you guys have watched similar weapons being demonstrated on YouTube, I think many of you have, it's very hard to cock it less than a quarter, because it can cock quarter cock, half cock, and fully cocked. So he's saying that he cocked it less than a quarter cock, which is almost not at all. Do you guys follow what I'm saying? Have you guys watched some of these demonstrations? So, as later became known, a live bullet discharged from the gun and struck Hutchins. Now, what's quite interesting with the language here, instead of saying Baldwin fired the gun, or it's like a live bullet discharged from the gun, not Baldwin fired the gun. You know what I mean? It's like the gun fired itself. And I must tell you guys, just in relation to this, it's actually not very funny, but here in South Africa, we often have gardeners and domestic workers, and I think my father made a joke about this once, that we had an electric lawnmower and the gardener rode over the cord of the electric lawnmower, and the lawnmower broke. And so this gardener went to my father and said, in slightly broken English, said, actually it wasn't English, it was another language, but effectively he said, sir, the lawnmower broke. He broke, right? Not, sir, I went over the lawnmower's cord and I broke the lawnmower. I kind of rode over the cord. No, he said, sir, he broke, meaning like he broke himself, or I didn't break it. He broke itself. Yeah. Well, this is like a double live. My voice is really going. That's a good point, Claudius. That's a really good point. I think the FBI report said something different. Let me see if I can bring that up. FBI report. So there are a couple of news articles. There's this one from TMZ. Report, Baldwin must have pulled trigger in Rust. FBI concludes in analysis. Then there's there's this one. See what this says. Sorry, my voice is like really. I think I'm going to need to get another glass of water. Listen to this. Anyway, the headline says it all. Gun used by Alec Baldwin couldn't have fired without pull of trigger. FBI says that came from August, so not that long ago. So in this complaint, he's kind of making the case that it fired itself, right? A live bullet discharged from the gun. He let go of the hammer and the gun went off. In other words, he didn't pull the trigger. In fact, trigger is not actually mentioned here. And then it struck Hutchins, traveled through her body, striking Sousa in the shoulder. Hutchins and Sousa fell to the ground. Now, this is the part that I think is really interesting and important, tragic as it is. Does Baldwin do anything to help? There are two injured people in that church. One is critically injured, the other one is seriously injured. Does he do anything to help them? And what it says here is, no, there was a sense of panic and confusion. No one understood what had happened. wasn't it clear what had happened? Someone was holding a gun, a loud noise, bang, went off. You probably saw smoke coming from the gun, like literally a smoking gun. The person directly in front of that gun fell on the ground, and the person behind that person also fell on the ground. And no one knew what had happened. Well, other people seemed to know what happened. They did try and assist. So I think his name's Sergei Svetnoy. I think he assisted Helena. And there was like bleeding immediately. So this is really interesting is immediately after that happened, apparently Baldwin was ordered to leave the set. Oh, once again, I don't have any agency. Once again, I can't do anything to help. So in the same way that I've got nothing to do with safety, when someone is actually injured, well, I've got nothing, it's got nothing to do with me. So who must render aid to Hutchins and Sousa? Only the medics? Is it not anyone else's responsibility to do anything? So in the same way, is safety on set only the responsibility of, let's say, the armorer, or is it everyone's responsibility? Is when something happens to someone right next to you, is it only the medic's responsibility, or is it, can someone else who's right there also help? Outside the church, Baldwin and others began to talk to each other to try to piece together what had just happened. Like it's one big mystery. What on earth could have happened here? Wouldn't you have known instantly what happened? Baldwin thought Hutchins fainted or had a heart attack. But wasn't there just like a really, really loud bang? In fact, somebody said, I think it was Sousa, I can't remember exactly who it was, but somebody said that was the loudest bang they'd ever heard. Or it was a bang that was much louder than dummy rounds. Really? You thought she had fainted or had a heart attack? But there was this loud bang while you were doing something with a gun. Didn't you see any blood? This is where it kind of, to me, beggars belief. Like, isn't the obvious thing to think X, Y, Z? So would the obvious thing be to think ABC? I don't know. Was there anyone else who thought that she fainted or had a heart attack? Also, if you fainted or had a heart attack, why wouldn't you try and do CPR for that person, or bring them a glass of water, or take them out into the open air? Why would you run out of the church if somebody fainted? Right? Wouldn't you be like, are you okay? Wouldn't you actually talk to them? So that's another thing that, to me, like you feel like you've got to ask the question, isn't there something missing here? Don't you say something like, are you okay, to your director and your cinematographer? I mean, 1 minute you were talking to them, right? And they were talking to you. The next thing they fall on the ground, do you sort of step over them and go out the room and then talk over there about what could have happened? I mean, they're still there. Can't you ask them, are you okay? Why do you go out the church and then think there, did you faint? And I think he said that in one of the interviews. Did she faint? He was confused about why Sousa was screaming in pain. Yeah, heart attack victims don't bleed. That's true. And the other thing is, when someone sustains a bullet wound like that, they bleed instantly. They fall instantly. You know, when you faint, I've fainted before, you don't just drop to the ground. You kind of gradually crumple to the ground. So what is the relevance of this deafening discharge, which also creates smoke? So when a firearm discharges like that, it's not just a loud bang. There's a spark, right? There is also the smoke that comes out of it. And then there's also, besides that, there's smoke that you can smell. So despite there being a smell, a loud sound, and also the flash, do you not do you just forget that? So a loud sound went off, and then someone fainted at that moment. The other thing that I think you've got to bear in mind is there's a the gun kicks. I think there's a better word for that. What do they call it? When the gun, what do they call that? The recoil. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, Zircon. You're definitely on the same wavelength. So you've just had a gun in your hand. Let's say the gun did fire itself. Didn't you feel the recoil? You must bear in mind, for that bullet to have the energy to go into one person's body, through that body into another person, it is sending energy in the opposite direction. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So in other words, this bullet that is speeding forward destructively towards another person is sending energy in the opposite direction into the hand of the person who's holding the gun, and it goes like that. And so you go out the church, don't you think, wow, that felt like a real round? Have you never fired a real round in your life? In all these movies that you've acted in, have you never ever fired a live round? And as an actor, someone who's got an imagination, do you not imagine that that could have happened? Do you imagine all the possible scenarios except that scenario? So anyway, look at all these things. There's recoil, there's the smell, there's the smoke, there's the gun that's kind of in your hand. Don't you look at it as well? Don't you look at the gun that was in your hand? What do you do with the gun that's in your hand? Anyway, one individual suggested that a stone may have been lodged in the gun and discharged. Another individual suggested that a live round might have been in the gun, but the idea was quickly dismissed by others as far-fetched. At the time, Mitchell approached Baldwin and said, "You realize you're not responsible for any of what happened in there, don't you?" So that's quite interesting. There's a verbatim quote, what Mamie Mitchell said. So that is definitely an interesting point, based on this being a cross complaint, right? Yet Mitchell is now suing Baldwin in this action. After some time, a helicopter arrived. Sousa was taken to the hospital by ambulance. Law enforcement had also arrived on the scene and began speaking with those who were involved in the incident. Baldwin willingly sat for an interview with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office for nearly 2 hours, declining the invitation to have a lawyer present because he had nothing to hide. Do you think that that is true, that he had nothing to hide? Like, do you think he had nothing to hide on his phone? Do you think that he had nothing to hide in terms of pulling the trigger? Do you think there was nothing to hide in terms of safety? Also, as far as I know, is very shortly after they said that she died, the interview was sort of over. It goes on to say he's continued to cooperate with the sheriff's office in the hope that they get to the truth of what actually happened. So I just want to do a quick Google search if there's anything to do with that. Baldwin. So we know that he turned over his cell phone only in January. So all of this happened in October. He only turned over his cell phone in January. And 4 days before that, he said, he was accused of not cooperating, and then he disputed that. He said, no, I am cooperating. It was also published in Rolling Stone, this article. Denies allegations he's not complying with Rust shooting investigation. That was January 9. So not complying January 9, and then again that came up, that came up again January 10, and then 4 days after that he handed over his cell phone. On the 7th of January, lawyers explained why he hasn't handed over his phone. On the 8th, Alec Baldwin slams claims that he's not helping Rust investigation. There it is. So that definitely came up during this whole thing. Was he being cooperative? Him going on to ABC, was that cooperating? Him handing over his phone, was that cooperating? When he did, you know. Okay, so let's continue. At the conclusion of his initial interview with the sheriff's office, Baldwin's interviewer slid her phone across the table and showed him a photograph of the object that had just been removed from Sousa's shoulder at the hospital, a .45 caliber slug. Baldwin recognized the object as a live bullet, and he finally began to comprehend what had transpired on the set of Rust that day. Oh, so he only comprehended that when it was shown to him, when a slug was shown to him hours later. He was shocked. In his mind, it was outside the realm of all possibility. This is all stuff that he's been repeating over and over again, several times. The unthinkable had happened. Was it really that unthinkable when you look at the evidence that we've seen? Sousa was treated at the hospital and recovered. Tragically, Hutchins died of her injuries. I want to see if I can bring up that that moment where he's actually where he actually says that about. Let me just see if I can bring it up. Playlists. Just give me a second. There it is. Okay. I had it and I lost it. There it is. Okay. View full playlist. I just want to play the part where he is told that she has died. Here it is. So I must say, when I saw that, I kind of had a slightly different attitude to everything. I thought that was a very genuine response from Baldwin. That was my feeling. Was he didn't try and say anything, he didn't try and patch it over. He seemed genuinely shocked. That was my sense. Thanks a lot, Liesl. I appreciate it. Because what can you say in a situation like that? Oh, you couldn't hear it, really? Could no one hear it? Was it muted? Okay, sorry about that. Let me. Oh, that's embarrassing. Let me try it again. Share screen, share system audio. Okay. Let me do that again.
I do have some very unfortunate news to tell you.
What?
She didn't make it. Yeah. So Joel's still at the hospital, but the other person involved didn't make it. Sorry. I just didn't want you to hear it outside of here.
Is there something we could do for you? Is that Jonah in there?
What?
Jonah, the one back there?
Yeah, the gravity. That's definitely the word. That's definitely the word. Yeah, I've heard that a lot. He's an actor, so it's kind of the same thing that happened with Amber Heard. If she acts in a way that is appropriate, well, then she's an actor. If she acts or he acts in a way that's inappropriate, then whatever, right? So I don't know. I actually felt quite sensitive and compassionate to him in that situation. It seemed very genuine to me. I think he was genuinely shocked. Anyway, events after October 21, 2021. In the months since Hutchins' tragic death, let's do this. Substantial law enforcement resources have been spent to determine exactly what went wrong. The investigation has not resolved the exact chain of events, but it has brought to light numerous safety lapses that contributed to the environment that allowed this tragedy to happen. New Mexico's Occupational Health and Safety found that Rust said had numerous safety violations and noted Hall's and Zachary's failure to enforce the safety standards. I don't think it really says here that New Mexico gave Rust the maximum possible fine. So they didn't just think that there were a couple of safety problems. They gave the maximum fine there, right? Safety bulletins were supposed to be attached to the call sheets distributed daily, but emails collected show that the safety bulletins were not regularly attached to the call sheets, a fact which Halls conceded in his interview with the OHSB. As such, no one was regularly apprising Rust's crew and staff of safety precautions. So if you think about that, if no one was regularly apprising Rust's crew of safety precautions, did no one notice that? Did no one go, hey, shouldn't you be addressing safety here? As safety coordinator, Halls is also supposed to hold safety meetings every single day that a firearm was to be used on the Rust set. Well, it's one thing to say that, but did somebody else not notice or not know that should have been the case? And I've got a feeling Lane Looper may have known that and may have said something about that. In in some other forum. Anyway, text messages to Halls show that he had to be reminded multiple times of this responsibility. So let's go to that. That's from Roe Walters. That was actually the producer, I think, who, I say this under correction, but I think Walters was the one who was in touch with Hannah when she asked for a card. And I think she was told, go and get one at Walmart. Anyway, hey friends, just a reminder that we need to do safety meetings in the morning, especially on stunts days and on days we're moving locations. You're all awesome, right? And that was sent on the 14th, so a week before the incident. Here's another one. We need safety meetings every morning. That's from Gabriel Pickle. That was sent on that day, that morning. That's quite interesting, that was sent on the morning of the incident. It has also been discovered that Zachary harbored serious reservations regarding Gutierrez-Reed's performance, right? I think she was so drunk that she didn't know she brought live ammunition onto the truck. That was sent 4 days after the incident. She was so drunk she didn't know she brought live ammunition when she went to go get a gun from the safe. I think I did mention in one of my analysis, was any alcohol consumed during lunch? I think I did mention that. Then over here, I told you Hannah was blackout drunk last weekend, right? So that was sent, I think the same day, 3 minutes earlier. And I guess that is a possibility, that you can make mistakes when you're under the influence, or can that be a factor in this story? In interviews with police investigators, Zachary also noted that she was aware that Gutierrez-Reed was using marijuana in her free time off-set. The FBI has also tested the bullets on set. Dozens of them were found to be live ammunition. The FBI tested numerous cartridges. Okay, let's go on a little bit. To make matters worse, it turns out that the gun given to Baldwin to use on Rust was in poor condition. It talks about a fracture of these internal components. So I think that is what they're arguing, is that the gun did literally fire itself because the mechanism was worn down. The Rust film had numerous scenes that involved shootouts. Baldwin himself and numerous others on set could have been in the crossfire. And anyway, have a look at this image. It's from Travis Fimmel pressing a cocked gun with his finger on the trigger to the back of Brady Noon's head. Can you guys see that? So this could also have ended in tears, this moment. He's the actor that previously acted in Vikings, right? The negligence of Gutierrez-Reed, Halls, Kenny, PDQ, and Zachary has caused Baldwin substantial harm. He's suffered substantial damage. He's suffered physically, emotionally, whatever. Well, as much as he's suffered, he has his wife has had another baby. They certainly seem to be presenting a fairy tale on Instagram. As much as he's suffered, he's been acting in other roles. He's been he's been working actively. So it also says here, not a day goes by that he doesn't think about and suffer from the events that happened that day. He's lost numerous job opportunities and associated income. Having said that, he's also not lost the rust production that is going to be going forward, apparently. Okay, so I'm not going to take it further than that. We're on page 33. It deals with some more legal issues. Second cause of action, blah, blah, blah. Equitable contribution, jury trial by jury trial demand, and it's authored by his attorney, and that is it. That is it. So I hope you found this analysis interesting. What is important here is you're getting basically Baldwin's position like 1 year later, and what has changed. Well, we certainly did learn a little bit about the situation on set, just how chaotic and disorganized the storage was of the firearms and also the ammunition. We also learned that Hannah apparently went shooting with the actual firearm the night before the incident with live rounds. And then there's allegations. I don't know how much weight to put into them, but the allegations of possible substances in this as well. Thanks a lot, Les Brown. Thanks very much. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Brian. Les Brown, thanks very much. Informative discussion. Cool. Okay, so that's it from me. It's been quite a hectic double billing today, but I think we got through quite a lot that was quite important. Stephanie says, what about Helena's husband and son? Yeah, like what about that? Yeah, that's also true. Okay. Yeah, so quite a few wow moments in this document, right? Quite a few wow moments. Cash says, thank F, needs sleep. Okay. Susan says, very grateful to have found your channel and will be following you. Thanks so much, Susan. Okay, so that's it from my side. Bria, it's 3 o'clock in the morning where you are, so I really wish you a good night's sleep. And I want to thank everyone else for your really interesting contributions here. Really good to have you with us. A few new names as well. Mods, thanks so much. Stephanie, Terry, and Bria, and then also the members that are here, Deborah and everybody else, Susan Griffiths, Clodis. Thanks also for the super chats. This was quite a long thing following the previous one, and that definitely was a little bit of a boost now and then. If you're watching this after the fact on replay and you enjoyed the analysis, you're welcome to hit the thanks button. The other thing is I'm trying to get my channel to 100,000 subs, so please make a little bit of extra effort sharing this to the appropriate groups that deal with if it's Alec Baldwin on Facebook or Reddit or someone who you know is interested in it. You can also share via WhatsApp or email or whatever. All of that helps. So thanks a lot for that. Stephanie says, thanks for the continued coverage. Mary Steelman, thanks very much. Yeah, don't worry, knee issues don't affect my voice. But thanks very much. Thanks, guys. Okay, guys, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you guys next time. All the best.